Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. My name's Kyle Hudson, candidate for mayor of Westchester. And tonight we're doing a town hall on addiction and opioid addiction and recovery. As you may know, for a while, we had the mayor's opioid task force here in Westchester. And I invited some of the folks that I've worked with on that task force to share with you what we were trying to do and what our mission was, so that you can kind of understand what I'm pushing for when I say I want to continue and expand the Mayor's Opioid Action Task Force. So real quick, I just want to introduce everybody. We have Liz Tankel. Say hi, Liz.
Hi.
We have Kevin Patrick Kelly. Say hi, Kevin.
Hello, everyone.
And then we have Ethan Healy. How you doing, Ethan?
Good.
So we're going to go through, I'm just going to kind of host the night, but we're going to start off with a story of recovery. Liz Tankel has an amazing story. I don't want to, steal any of your thunder. So I'm just going to pass it off to Liz. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It's become a family mission for our family. My oldest son, Eric, is a person in recovery from heroin addiction. He's been in recovery for over 14 years. And at the time that we discovered he was addicted to heroin, he was under 18. The statistics were very, very bad. Only 1% of people who attempted recovery were clean after 5 years. And so recovery seemed like a daunting task. We didn't know anyone else. This was 2006 when he entered treatment. We didn't know anyone else who had gone through recovery for heroin. There were no supports. There was no caring parents. Al-Anon existed, but that dealt specifically more with alcohol and more common street drugs, because the heroin and opioid epidemic hadn't hit the main line at that point. So we were really alone in the forest on this one. And as it turns out, he did very well in treatment, did beautifully in treatment. From there, he went to college. Then he got a job at a bank, did very well, decided to come back to the main line 5 years into recovery, and went to the University of Pennsylvania, where he got his master's degree in counseling, and became a family therapist. Well, actually not a family therapist, he's an LPC, which is licensed professional counselor, but started doing a lot of work with families. Family therapy is its own license. And we all decided to really be public about our family struggle with his heroin addiction, and started doing a lot of public speaking, talking to families about what they were going through. My younger son ended up going to Penn also and getting his degree in counseling, and he became a therapist. And at the suggestion of both of my sons, I went to graduate school, and I graduated last May, and now I'm a therapist. Yay! And while we are trained to deal with many, many issues, we really like dealing with addiction, because we know that people can get better. And that's our whole message, that this is not a death sentence. It's not the end of the world. People do recover. People lead happy and healthy lives. And we are sort of evangelists in getting that message out there, that this is, it can be a blip on the screen of your life. It doesn't have to be the end of anything, as long as you survive. And I've taken Ethan's wonderful Narcan training, and so happy to be part of the movement of moms and others who are carrying Narcan with them, so that when people get into trouble, we are trained and prepared to save those lives. And so I'm grateful for Ethan for the work that he's done. I'm grateful for KPK, who just brings his energy and enthusiasm to this topic. And Kyle, thanks for rallying us all around this, because it's an opportunity to get to know your community better, to serve your community in a really solid way, and give hope to families who may be feeling like it's a hopeless situation. That's it.
Yeah, well, Liz, thank you so much, because I do think, I mean, let's just be honest, there's a lot of negativity surrounding this topic. And I think it's important that people do see the hope, right? One of my favorite quotes is, all the darkness in the world can't extinguish a single candle. You know what I
Right.
mean? As long as you burn bright and you have a support network around you, and that doesn't have to always necessarily be family, right? Like, you're lucky you have a family unit, but there are groups out there, there are resources out there to help. And I just think it's so great what you and your family do to make sure people
Thanks.
have
Yeah,
hope.
there are tons and tons of resources. People are really up to speed on this, particularly in this area. And when we started our journey, the internet was very new. Think about it, 2006, we had a dial-up modem. And most organizations didn't have websites. And if they did, they were really, really simple, rudimentary affairs. So with access to information from all over the world, you don't have to feel alone when you're going through this, because we have people in your community and everywhere that are dealing with this topic.
Well, thank you so much. I do think I think the Opioid Action Task Force website is still up.
It
And
is.
yeah, and I'll put it I'll put it right below, because when we edit this, I'll put the website right here. So if that's a great starting point, I think, if you're looking for a place to start. So Liz, thank you so much for sharing
Thank you
your
so
story.
much, guys. It's a pleasure to see everybody. Keep up all your good work, and we'll be in touch working on the next project.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So I guess that's a good segue into the next segment. Now, 4 years ago, when I ran for mayor last time, I mean, opioid addiction wasn't even on my thing when I launched my campaign. I had no idea that this was even happening until I was invited to go to a Narcan training hosted by Ethan Healy from the Good Fellowship Ambulance Company. And I remember going to this training and just being floored, because I mean, when you see how many people were dying, and it was one of those things where you had to be moved, right? Even though it wasn't impacting me directly, it was something that still impacts me indirectly. I mean, before the pandemic, you actually had a higher chance of dying from an opioid overdose than a car accident. That's how prevalent these deaths were. So Ethan Healy took it upon himself to make sure that our police officers in Chester County all were given life-saving Narcan, which is a overdose reversal drug, which can sometimes be a little difficult to get your hands on. But Ethan made it readily accessible, and he did all the work. I mean, really, he deserves all the credit for this, and I really thank him for the work he did. So I asked him to come out tonight and just do his Narcan training, kind of show people what this drug is, how they can help people, and then maybe where they can find it if they need it themselves. So Ethan, thank you for coming out.
Thank you, Kyle. As Kyle mentioned, my name is Ethan Healy. I work for Good Fellowship Ambulance. It's 911-based community ambulance service that services Westchester Borough. One of the things that we started an initiative about at this point, almost 7 years ago, titled Project Naloxone. Project Naloxone was started with the goal of saving lives. The opioid epidemic was really hitting our community hard, and not just our local community, not just across the Commonwealth, but nationwide. Focusing more locally here in Chester County, over the past 6 years or so, we've lost a significant amount of people to opioid, accidental drug overdose, especially related to opioids. Just to throw out some statistics here, 2015, we lost 74 people here in Chester County through an accidental drug overdose. 2016, 97. 2017, about 144 people. And if you do the math, it's approximately nearly three people per week dying in an accidental manner due to overdose. 2018, 112. 2019, 104. Due to an accidental drug overdose. And just to repeat, that's locally here in Chester County. Those of you that are not familiar with Narcan, it's also referred to as naloxone. Narcan is the trade name. Naloxone, by definition, is an opioid antagonist. So it's basically a substance that blocks opioids from causing an effect on the body. So an easy analogy that I like to kind of compare, opioid use to is imagine, opioids are both prescription medications as well as illicitly heroin. Opioids act on the mu receptor, the opioid receptor in the brain. Imagine my fist here is the mu receptor, the opioid receptor. When somebody takes an opioid, whether it be a prescription medication, pain reliever, oxycodone, Percocet, morphine, they're commonly prescribed opioids that somebody could take for pain management. So when somebody takes an opioid, that opioid essentially sits on that receptor. So imagine my fist is the nerve, the mu receptor in the head. Imagine my other hand here as the medication. When somebody takes that medication sits on that nerve or that receptor, causing an effect on the body. Prescription pain relievers help to relieve pain, help people deal with pain. They actually increase their pain tolerance, their feeling of pain, and help them kind of live their day-to-day life and help them deal with what's going on. Opioids have some pretty severe addictive properties. So when taken in high volume or taken incorrectly, they do have the potential for overdose. So imagine again, my fist is the nerve in the head, the mu receptor. If somebody takes more and more opioids, those opioids stack on to the receptor here, causing an even greater effect on the body. Some of the side effects to opioid use is when taken in high volume or incorrectly, they actually slow somebody's respiratory drive down or their ability to breathe. So again, as more of those opioids stack onto the receptor, they cause an even greater effect on the body. So again, if somebody takes more and more of those opioids, the receptors telling the body increase their pain tolerance, but at the same time, they're also telling the body slow down their breathing. Eventually, the breathing will stop and the person will go into cardiac arrest. Respiratory arrest leads into cardiac arrest. When somebody stops breathing, their heart eventually stops. Naloxone comes in a intranasal spray and an auto-injector shot designed to be given right in the outer thigh. Designed when somebody's overdosed on an opioid, naloxone can be given up the nose with a single spray or single shot in the thigh to reverse the overdose. Once the shot's given or the spray is given, assuming the person's on opioids, it'll actually stop the overdose from occurring. It'll restore their breathing to a somewhat normal rate and a somewhat normal rhythm, and it'll save their person's life. Naloxone has been on the market for, at this point, well over 70 years. In the pre-hospital setting, in the over-the-counter setting, it's only been out there for about 7 years. So like I mentioned, October of 2014, a law was passed known as David's Law, Act 139. Act 139 allows somebody to obtain naloxone over the counter. So you can go to any local pharmacy and obtain naloxone over the counter from the pharmacist to use in an emergency setting. As we're well aware, the opioid epidemic has really hit our community hard. We see overdoses. We see people overdosing in all types of different venues, different areas. So again, having naloxone on hand could really save somebody's life. David's Law, or Act 139, provides good Samaritan protection to the use of naloxone, meaning if you come into contact with somebody whom you believe is overdosed and you have naloxone on hand, you are permitted by law to utilize that product in the emergency setting. To compare it, those of you that are trained in CPR, this is the same good Samaritan protection that's provided with CPR, which is added to the naloxone use. So come into contact with somebody you believe is overdosed, you call 911, you believe that person is suffering an overdose and you have naloxone on hand, you are permitted by law to utilize that product to help save that person's life. Okay, that's part of the Good Samaritan protection that was passed with David's Law, or Act 139, to the public use of naloxone. Again, you can obtain naloxone really from any local pharmacy. It is behind the counter, however, it is over the counter. And it's really important that once the naloxone is given, you encourage the person at that point to go to the hospital and to seek medical treatment. Recovery is possible. Naloxone is very safe. It's very easy to use. I encourage everybody to, if you're looking to obtain naloxone, get trained first, go to the pharmacy, get naloxone, keep it in a place where you know where it is. You never know when you might come into contact with somebody who you believe's overdosed, and you never know when you may have the opportunity to save somebody's life. So again, naloxone is very safe. It's very easy to use. It is a tool in the in fighting the opioid epidemic. It is not the saving, to say the one tool that saves the whole problem. It is a small tool to help to help save lives within our community.
Yeah, and saving lives is the ultimate goal, right? I mean, that needs to be number one, is making sure our neighbors survive, and then we work on getting them help and recovery through other services. But Narcan is that first step. And I think it's so amazing the work you've done, Ethan, to make sure that literally every cop in Chester County carries Narcan on them because of Ethan. And I really think you've saved countless lives in this town, in this community, because of your actions. Real quick though, if someone wanted to find, where would they find that training video? Because I remember there's a short video, right? Is that on YouTube?
So there's several different training programs that are out there for the use of naloxone. As a bystander, as a community member looking to obtain naloxone, you do not need training. The products that are out there on the market for the public use of naloxone are pretty easy to use. The nasal spray option is very, very similar to an allergy type product. Allergy type nasal product, like a Flonase and Nasonex, one of those type of allergy products. So I'm not saying that you need training. However, the training, it can't hurt to be trained. The Pennsylvania Department of Health has several different training videos you could watch. As part of my day-to-day role, I run Project Naloxone through Good Fellowship. We offer training in partnership with the Department of Drug and Alcohol here at the county. In the community setting, if you're looking to have a training, a group training, we would happy to provide that. The training's very to the point. We go over some of the treatment services here in the community, what naloxone is, and then how do you obtain naloxone. So it's very, very brief. If anyone's looking to obtain naloxone, you really could go to any local pharmacy, like I had mentioned. The over-the-counter naloxone delivery device retails for about $150. It lasts approximately 2 years, a 2-year shelf life. That's variable depending on the product on hand at the pharmacy, but the average is about 2 years. And again, one of the things that I always like to end with is, you can't hurt somebody by giving them naloxone. So in saying that, if you come in upon somebody that you believe is overdosed, as a bystander, you have naloxone on you, you believe at that time period it is a drug overdose. First thing you want to do is make sure they are in fact breathing, and if they are, you want to utilize that naloxone delivery product to help save that person's life. So again, I always say, like I mentioned, naloxone is just a tool of the equation here. So that's, I think, an important piece there.
Yeah, thank you. And again, thank you so much for sharing all that information, for the work you've done. I think this is a good time also to bring in Kevin, because Kevin and Ethan was there at the beginning too. There was a handful of people. It wasn't just us. But one of the things before the task force kind of winded down, we were talking about getting more additional Narcan distributions in the community, and I think that that's something that we should pursue. I know you were heading that, and then the world changed overnight, and I think honestly people don't realize that we definitely took our eyes off the ball on this, right? COVID was a distraction. It sucked up all the air in the room, all the resources, and so we were unable to give this epidemic that we were already going through the attention it deserves. And I do think that we need to refocus, especially as COVID starts to get out, because we don't have full numbers from last year. We have the half-year report, and it was trending to be higher than it was the year before. Again, won't know until we get those numbers. But there was other interesting things in that report that, like, meth is starting to creep up in usage. I think it doubled in overdose deaths from the year before. And so, I think, Kevin, this is a good time, and feel free to jump in, Ethan, about, what our vision for this moving forward is, because I think that, what we were doing before was, I think, an excellent model. We were having quarterly meetings, where people were coming in and sharing their stories, sharing resources. We'd have resource tables. I thought that we did this thing around Thanksgiving every year that was really nice, where we had kind of like a dinner where people could come together, because not everyone has those support networks like the Tankels do. And, I don't know, Kevin, what is, you and I remember we met, and, I was like, this is something I'm passionate about. You're like, this is something I'm passionate about. Why don't you talk about the experience of the task force as it was, and then maybe what we're thinking about moving forward?
Absolutely. Well, first, let me just preface my remarks by saluting you, Kyle, for using your candidacy and your platform to draw attention to an issue that is close to my heart, close to the hearts of a lot of people in our community. So I salute you for doing that. And I just want to say that when it comes to this issue, yes, Kyle is running in a Democratic primary, but we need people on this issue, not on the left, not on the right. We need people out front. And that's where Kyle Hudson is. That's where Ethan Healy is. That's where Liz Tankel is. That's where so many people are who are doing the work of making sure that this is treated like a public health crisis, that this was an epidemic before the pandemic, and this is still an epidemic during the pandemic. So to get to the crux of the question that you asked, Kyle, before the pandemic, we had obviously monthly meetings that we would try to organize. That was then under the mayorship of Mayor Herrin. And those meetings had a lot of great initiatives that we pursued. We did town halls. We educated the public on the best rehabilitation facilities in the community to send their loved ones to treatment. We also did a lot of education as well, how addiction impacts the brain, how it impacts the family, the unit of the family as well. We also did some probably some outside the box things as well. We did the Flex for Recovery event was another one that we did, where we exercised. We encouraged people to come to tables to learn more about recovery. We had bands playing. And one of the most important things that we did at the end of the year is that, and you would know this better than I, Kyle, is we together organized a vigil at the end of the year for the people who have overdosed and died in the community. And we did that every year. We did it probably in December. Every year it was in December, toward the end of the year, for families that feel alone, that need comfort, that need guidance, that need purpose. And we did a candlelight vigil at the end in a moment of silence. And we had a few people who have lost loved ones, friends and family speak. Going forward, obviously, the pandemic has sucked all the oxygen out of this issue. We need to put the focus back on it, because there are still families suffering all over the community as it relates to opioid, heroin, and drug addiction. Going forward, I would love to see us pursue the initiatives that we began or started to begin before it ended. And those were working with our local business community to try and encourage them to get Narcan in their businesses in case somebody does overdose, whether it's an employee, whether it's a patron, to get them trained. Hopefully they will attend Ethan's training seminar on how to properly administer Narcan to people who need it in the moment of panic or moment of crisis or overdose. And One other thing we wanted to do too is continue to promote the box in the government services building where people could anonymously get rid of their prescription pills, their opioids, and keep them out of the hands of people who are in recovery, people who are suffering addiction, and especially children who could get their hands on them as well. There's a lot of other initiatives I love to see pursue going forward, more education, more resources given to families who absolutely need it. But the prime thing that we need to focus on going forward is just acknowledging that there still is a problem in the community. That is the biggest thing we must do going forward, because unlike Kyle, Ethan, Liz, myself, and others, I don't hear many people talking about it these days. Obviously, COVID is a pandemic. Obviously, it is a danger. Obviously, it presents a public health crisis as well, but we cannot forget about this. And again, I reiterate, this was an epidemic before the pandemic. This continues to be an epidemic during the pandemic, and we've got to acknowledge that.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you remember, but the very first event that we had to cancel because of COVID-19 was an initiative that I was actually very excited to start. It was one that I'd been working on for a while, a sober schedule. Because everything in Westchester, there's so many bars. I think it's important that we work to have at least one thing every night that you can go to and have fun, and not be surrounded by this kind of stuff. The first night, I was super excited to do like Dungeons and Dragons and like board games with the mayor. I was super excited to do that. Obviously, once COVID hit, that wasn't safe, but I would like to pursue that because I do think, to me, everyone knows I'm a nerd. Like board gaming and that community has always been a huge, big part of my life. And it is, I think, a place where everyone is welcome. And I think that, it's a natural ally of the recovery community that we're trying to build. I do want to address, there's one thing, one bit, I've gotten feedback, from people. A lot of times people say, there were addiction crises before this, right? Like the crack addiction and all those other things. And like, why didn't you do anything about that? And what I say to you, if it's one of your concerns is, and this is why I talk about expanding the task force, because look, when the crack epidemic happened, I was like 15 years old. If I was alive and in a position to do something, I'd like to think I would have. And while right now opioids are what we're facing, as we know, this is a crisis. Like addiction, it changes. We go through phases. It's methamphetamines, it's opioids. There's all sorts of different things out there. And as we see, like I said earlier, meth is rising. So that may be something we need to deal with as well. So I'd like for the task force under my leadership to be more flexible. I want to keep opioids as a focus, but not ignore other issues that are going on in our community, right? We can't have tunnel vision, because at the end of the day, addiction is a disease, right? It's a disease that people are suffering from. It's not something that makes you a bad person. It's something that, just means you need some help. And, I remember I did a police ride along 4 years ago, and the officer says something that always stuck with me. He's like, no one is stronger than opioids. No one can take an opioid, like take opioids and then beat it, just on their own with no, this is not how it works. It's chemical, right? There's chemical things that make it so it's not your fault, and a lot of times these people that suffer from addiction, they come from, they break their arm and they're prescribed, Oxycontin, and then one day it hurts real bad, or maybe not even maybe they take it exactly how it's prescribed, right? They take it exactly how the doctor prescribed it, and for whatever reason, their biology, because we're all different. All these things, these chemicals, they react differently to every single one of us. And I just think that as a community, we need to come together and help each other, right? Because this is how you know, there's that saying, you know, if you want to go somewhere fast, you go alone. If you want to go somewhere far, you go together, right? This is a long journey. We're not going to beat addiction in my term, right? This is something that we're going to have to build infrastructure to help people, right? We're going to have, this is a long-term goal. And, you know, maybe we need to look at ways to, you know, maybe make this more permanent, so we're not so reliant on who's in the mayor's office to make this a priority issue, you know? So we're going to be exploring all different options, and I highly encourage anyone, we're going to, you know, put my contact information in the bio, and anyone who has an idea or wants to become a part of this initiative, I want you to reach out, because, you know, statistically, you know someone who's going through this, even if you don't know it, right? Like, I remember when I started doing this, I was like, oh, I don't know anyone who's suffering from this. And then I started making it part of my campaign, and I had people reach out, people who I knew, who were like, wow, you know, I can't believe this is something that we're suffering from privately, and thank you for going out there and saying that, right? And I think it's important as the mayor to talk about these things, right? So people don't feel like they're suffering by themselves, because like I said, statistically, there's a lot more people going through it than you think. And if we do pool our resources as a community, I think we can, you know, ultimately save lives, because that is the ultimate goal. So again, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I want to thank, you know, Liz and Ethan and Kevin. You know, you've all taught me so much over these years. You know, I really, this is something that is important, and I think it's important to acknowledge that none of us know everything about it, and you have to constantly be learning. And I think that, you know, if we do our job right, we can provide the tools for people to find their own path to recovery. So again, check out there is still a Mayor's Opioid Action Task Force, even though we're not having meetings. There is a website, so we'll link to that in the description. But thank you all. Have a nice weekend, and hopefully we can see you at another one of these meetings soon.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for bringing attention to this issue, Kyle. I really, really appreciate it, and I know many families out there appreciate it as well. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Kyle.